The first point. Some points on... Actually, it's too far away to get it to you. Actually, it's not just you, but pretty much everyone sings in Jai Radha Madhava, the song, the last line. They sing Yamuna. But in this context, because it's a word joined with other, it becomes Jamuna or Yamuna, because it's joined with other words, it becomes an adjective. So just like Mathura becomes Mathuradish. When it becomes an adjective. When a noun is used as an adjective, then the first vowel in Sanskrit, so we can understand this is a Sanskrit song, not a Bengali song. Could be either. So anyway, that's Jamunatira. Another thing, you're singing Namaste Narasimhaya, you're trying to Namaste Nrsinghaya, but it's in the first line of the song, it's Narasimhaya, but not in the last line. Is it? All right. Okay. I've heard it before. Also, this morning, I'm going to speak about, first of all, at least about Brahmacharis who are not well situated, who need to marry. This is not specific to anyone here, but it is a commonly observed phenomenon that some men who are brahmacharis need to be married, but they don't want to, which is intelligent in one sense, because brahmachari life in general is the best platform for becoming God conscious. There's no diversions, of which there are plenty in grihastha life, and probably only those who have been brahmacharis and later gone to grihastha life can appreciate how much better the brahmachari life is for being God conscious. You have nothing to do all day, from morning till night. And even if you get up in the middle of the night, you have nothing to do but to serve Guru and Krishna without the unavoidable diversions of family life. I mean, even if your wife and children are very cooperative and Krishna conscious, and you don't have any severe financial problems, or even if you don't have to work, that's very unusual. You have some ancestral property or whatever, so you don't have to work. But still there are so many diversions, just to administer the affairs of the family. What to speak of if the family members are not cooperative, and one has to join the majority of the population in working like an ass, for an ass, to get some money. Then the family life becomes in many ways an obstacle to becoming Krishna conscious. So there are those who are not really fit for brahmacharya life. They may have been previously, but in course of time, various desires have become prominent in their minds, and they're no longer fit for that. that happens also. That just like we see, children, they don't have manifest sexual desires. So, but that they arise at some point in time. So various desires may arise at some point in time. Ajamil was, of course, he was a young grihastha, but he was a very dharmic grihastha. But upon seeing a Shudra embracing a prostitute, dormant lusty desires swept over his consciousness. Just exactly, Ajamil is a good example of that verse from Bhagavad Gita in which it says that even actually there are two verses in the second chapter that says that the senses can just be overwhelmed even by a person of intelligence who is attempting to control them. Which verse? Neither of which I can remember just now. See what kind of Brahmacari I am. So it's intelligent in one sense not to be a Brahmacari, but on the not to be or to remain in the grihastha ashram if one has thus entered. But for some it may be better. It's another perspective. It's actually intelligent to enter the grihastha ashram if one is not fit for remaining in the Brahmacari ashram. That means if one has continued difficulty in rising early and following all the programs, even if one is physically unfit, that may be a factor also. If one cannot cooperate with or get along with other devotees or follow authorities, or if one is just generally dull and unenthusiastic, these are disqualifications for being in the Brahmacari ashram. Sometimes we see brahmacharis who are practically disqualified from they should never been brahmacharis in the first place. That's quite common in poorer countries like India and Bangladesh, that people from poor backgrounds become brahmacharis, and then the facilities which are there, they take advantage of, and they're like attracted to, getting a motorbike to ride around on in the name of service, or getting little gadgets that they would have never had in there had they remained in their social status. Sometimes we see young boys, they join, and within 6 months their bodily weight has doubled or more. So from the very beginning they're really not fit to be brahmacharis. They're not in the proper mood. But there are others who are serious about Krishna consciousness, but they're not fit to be lifelong brahmacharis. They're not, nothing to condemn them for. But some people are and some people aren't. And in India at least, India, Bangladesh, Nepal, even today the culture is better and supportive of renunciant life. So we see there are many brahmacharis who take to Krishna consciousness and remain brahmacharis throughout their life. In the West it's less common. Croatia has a few, more than most Western countries. But otherwise there are very few who've made it all the way through. in the West. Not to say that they can't be, especially if they're born of devotee parents. It's not that they can't be, but generally we see that the atmosphere in the Indian subcontinent, probably excluding Pakistan, I don't know. No, it's the same. Among the Hindus, it's the same culture there also. So it's more supportive. Despite Bollywood or Tollywood or whatever. In Tamil Nadu, they have Tollywood, just for your information. Despite that, the culture is more supportive for Brahmacharis. So, but there are some who join with seriously. They want to practice Krishna consciousness. They come with the idea of remaining all their life as a Brahmachari. They're attracted by that ideal. But there comes a point in which they should marry, but often then they're not ready to admit that. Maybe, well, there are different cases. Someone may think, well, just let me hang on, let me try and hold on, hang in. But usually those who are just hanging in, they don't hang on for very long. There are others whom it may be some kind of prestige issue. They don't want to lose the prestige or whatever, or show that they are not fit for that. And there may be others who are just like terrified of the thought of going into family lives, having seen the difficulties that their own parents or their own friends or whatever have been through, but some or are going through. And in such cases, it's very difficult to get to communicate that to those who, for their own benefit and for the benefit of others around them also, who they tend to disturb because they're such out-of-date brahmacharis, or they've over. It's like you have on the packet, best used before, their time has run up. So they tend to disturb others also. So it's very difficult for anyone to communicate that, look Prabhu, you really need to get married. Several times I've had the experience of in discussing the misbehavior or unusual behavior of certain brahmacharis with Basu Ghosh Prabhu, who will just immediately say he needs to get married. You can just immediately understand that. I'm seeing, I don't necessarily see it from that perspective, because my general perspective is that better they all stay brahmachari, but actually it's not. In some cases, that it's really better that they get married. It may take some time for them to come to that realization themselves, but I'm not saying this with I'm not saying this specifically with anyone in mind here, but as a general principle, because I do see it from time to time, and such devotees, like I say, they're just disturbing themselves and disturbing others by not admitting that they need a change. So again, we don't want to encourage those who are well situated in brahmachari life. We don't want to encourage them to enter brahmachari life. I mean, it's not that to remain a brahmachari one has to be 100% free from material desire. That's why you're in the brahmachari ashram. Otherwise you could be a paramahamsa from the start if we didn't have material desires. But those who are not able to keep them in check well enough that they're able to go on basically happily in devotional service without their mind being tortured by various desires, or if they're just not renounced enough. We see if someone, you can see it's some brahmachari, he's dressed in nice clothes and has so many gadgets and this and that, and you understand they're not in the right ashram. They have a fascination for collecting all the latest iPods and this and that, and this, whatever the thing may be. It may also be that it often happens that a brahmachari who's in management, especially in the West, they have to deal with so many female devotees, and then it's not a very suitable thing for brahmacharis to do, to have to deal with so many ladies. So it just looks better, and it's easier for them to deal with, if they have to regularly deal with women, it's easier for them to have it's better situated for them to be married, and also if they have a wife who can help them deal with all the ladies, it's better and more suitable like that. That which just reminds me, there was one case in Gunarnava Prabhu was the temple president in Vrindavan. He was a brahmachari, temple president of ISKCON Vrindavan, and he had to deal with so many Matajis, and he wanted to get married. And there was one sannyasi who had apparently insisted to Prabhupada that he take sannyas. He was married before, but it was seen within a short time that he also, even though he left his wife, he wasn't fit for sannyas. He didn't maintain his sannyas, unfortunately. But he was saying to Gunarnava, come on, just get out of this situation, just remain a brahmachari. And this came to Prabhupada's attention. Prabhupada said, no, but he stays in Vrindavan and marries and continues this. The service he's doing is more important than him remaining a brahmachari. Prabhupada was very satisfied with his service. Plus he had a British passport, which was very helpful in those days because you didn't have to get a visa for India. So, some considerations about this. So maybe this recording could be played to, if one sees such persons, kind of indirectly give them the hint that Prabhu, you're not properly situated. We do see some grihastas who are dynamically serving, but mostly because the time is taken up in other activities that they don't get that opportunity, so they have to project their consciousness into materialistic activities. So better to stay brahmachari. But for some, maybe better not. All right, so that's all I have to say about that for now, unless anyone else has anything else to comment on about this, or question, or whatever. Oh, I have just one more point about that. Sometimes we see that someone who wants to get married, or they may pull out of that and go on. There are also cases of that. Pull out of that and go on, and be good brahmacharis and even sannyasis later on. Yes, so. Mm.
Does that mean that you disagree with Prabhupada, or does that mean that we cannot have one answer to generalize the people,
I couldn't. The question is that I wrote in my book Brahmacari and Krishna Consciousness that Prabhupada recommended homosexuals to get married, but I wrote something like it doesn't seem very practical or something like that. I can't remember exactly what I wrote. You can remember better than me, you read it recently. Well, I had an experience with one devotee who was homosexually oriented, who agreed to my proposal that he marry, but he didn't actually marry, but he was associating, as they call it, with one young woman devotee, but he just couldn't get into it, he just couldn't get inspired. So should we see on a case-by-case basis? Yeah, I guess so. That's true with everyone. I mean, there are general principles for everyone, but we have to see on a case-by-case basis how to apply the general directions of Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. It's particularly difficult at the present time in which we're trying to establish or re-establish varnashram with very little idea of how it actually works, or experience of how it works, and with people to a large extent, they're even in India, they're out of that consciousness, whereas previously it was especially the Varna matter, it was pretty straightforward. People are born in a certain family and they just do what their father did. But that all broke down with the beginning of industrialization. It wasn't necessary, I mean, it was quite liquid also. I mean, there were whole jatis who just changed their status. There were it wasn't that previously that people from Shudra background didn't become wealthy, or some of them were landowners. They were officially Shudras, but some of them were businessmen, and many Brahmins, they did business also. I mean, I'm talking about from the British period, where I guess things started to break down in the British period. Break down in a more dramatic manner. And now it's just it's a mess, that's all. But still in India to a large extent, maybe especially outside the cities, you can see, I mean, you can just see people, they imbibe the characteristics of their traditional jati. Jati, what does jati mean? Social grouping. Hereditary social grouping. So just like recently I was at some farm project where they have a pilot Gurukul, and I just noted, and I later noted that to Madhav Gopinath Prabhu also, that they're wasting their time with these boys. They should be ploughing the fields. They're not fit for studying Sanskrit or any such thing. I said, it's just what I thought with being there 2 or 3 days. And he said, yeah, everyone who goes there thinks the same thing. You can just see these boys are... Because I said to him, he's running a Gurukul also, don't put these... If boys are not fit for it, don't try to make them into Brahmins. It just doesn't, it's not good for them or for anyone else. So that's just one example. I mean, from a very young age, they're not even 10 years old, but you can see they're just they're Shudra mentality. It's not to condemn them, but it's just a fact, and it's better they're treated like that and educated like that and raised like that. Educated means like that. They can draw a plow, they can water the garden, or make pots, or make baskets, or whatever Shudras do, various things. But they're not. It's no use to teach them all this Sanskrit and all this. So yeah, in the modern age, things are all, in general, things are very mixed up and unclear. So it's a great challenge to establish varnashram, no doubt, but it should be attempted under Srila Prabhupada's order. Yeah, anything else? Some devotees are brahmacharis for a while, then they start thinking of getting married.
Once they get married, all of a sudden see a need for money and maintaining a family.
When they get married, all of a sudden they see the need for getting married and maintaining a family.
So that's when I think, do you think that is the reason why most devotees are, scared to get into the ashram? If the local ISKCON temple not able to support them by
If the local ISKCON temple is not able to support them as grihastas, they have to find their own ways to get money. And that's one reason why people who are not really fit to be brahmacharis remain as brahmacharis. This is off the topic. Yeah, I mentioned the topic of grihastas moving to the farms. He said in many cases it's the women who suffer most by going to the farm, because for the men, if the women are staying at home, then at home they have mixie, maybe a washing machine. They can buy all their spices ready ground. But if they go to the farm, then they don't have a mixie, at least on our farms. They don't have all these facilities. They have to wash the clothes by hand. They may have to bring drinking water. They may have to carry drinking water. Whereas for the men, it's a great relief, because if they're working like 14 hours a day, then their workload should go down. And they're not working among karmis and often nasty people. Often in the workplace they're working among. I know the short experience I had there. Some people are just nasty for no reason whatsoever. I had nothing to do with them, but they were just nasty to me anyway, because I guess they're just so frustrated in their work life and their family life that they just, I was young and they could take it out on me. So, yeah, that's one thought.
Something you already mentioned, health being cause of something like brahmacari.
Health, yeah. They're not fit to be brahmachari because they're so sick that they can't get up in the morning, they can't do much service.
Say somebody like that wants to join, should we?
If someone like that wants to join, no.
Who's sick,
No, they shouldn't. No, they shouldn't join. We can't turn, with all due respect to the fans of hospitals in ISKCON, we don't want to turn our temples into hospitals. Yeah, even they may desire, but it's just their bad luck. They should get their health together and then come. If someone's already admitted in the temple and they get sick, then it's our duty to look after them to the fullest extent possible. But we shouldn't admit someone who needs to be admitted to a hospital. And there are many cases like that. You may have heard there's a series of lectures by Devamrit Swami on preaching in the modern cities. Of course, his experience is mostly in New Zealand and Australia, in the West, not here. So I don't remember much about what he said. I listened to a whole series of lectures, but one point that really struck me, he said that most people who could be full-time devotees, preachers, or just most people nowadays, by the age of 20, they're already physically and mentally wrecked. Because, they start having sex at a very young age, they take lots of intoxication, they themselves don't have any good home background, so they're, emotionally disturbed right from the beginning. So he has a program to put people like in a halfway house for at least a year, so they can practice, they can go on doing their work or whatever, living with other aspiring devotees, and just try and get their work on their health with yoga and Ayurveda or whatever, and just by associating with devotees, let them become a little more sane before they join. The West is just a mess. If you see that like 70% of people in America during their life, they seek psychiatric help, you can just understand what the condition is. In America, you go to America, most people, they're nice people. But I don't know what's going on in their heads. It's 70%. They're nice, the way they deal with you is friendly and nice and this and that, but severe psychological and social problems. And that's the kind of people that we're preaching among. And it's increasing more in India, of course. As they bring in the Western culture, then naturally all the problems will come with it. And we're seeing also Vaman Prabhu, all of, how old, 32, something like that? 35. He's got diabetes, which it used to be an old person's disease. Yeah. It requires some physical strength to get up every morning, early in the morning, be engaged all day.
Mind collapses, a sick mind becomes weak and
Yeah. Yeah.
What about some devotees preaching from the beginning that it's better to be a grihastha?
Oh, that's another thing. There are those who preach from the beginning, better to be a grihastha. Even to young men who they could be brahmacharis. So I'm against that. If young men are good material for being brahmacharis, let them be. There are some grihasthas who seem to have the mentality that all these brahmacharis are useless and none of them should be. But one attitude is they're useless. They're not. They all have material desires, so why are they brahmacharis? And then there are others who think brahmacari is very bad. Everyone should just stay. They should be responsible citizens and look after their parents and get married and have children. So I'm against that. We should encourage young men who are suitable for it to be brahmacharis. Not that we encourage everyone. And then you get some people who are not fit to be brahmacharis, they're not fit to be grihasthas, they're just so irresponsible. You know anyone like that? I'm thinking of someone in Croatia. It's just Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy that they're chanting Hare Krishna, but not fit. They're not fit for the material world and they're not fit for the spiritual world. What should they do? Merge in the impersonal Brahman? No. They're not fit for that either.
There's folks who don't want to join, but they don't want to get married. They want to stay.
That's another category. Those who they don't want to be a full-time brahmachari, and they don't want to marry. They want to work and just live without a, because you can do so, and you can get your meals from some cafe or something. I mean, it's very common in the West. The people, they just live alone, but that's irresponsible. You should either take the responsibility for a family, or take the responsibility for preaching and pushing forward the mission and serving Guru. But just living alone and without any family and just working and living, that's not proper. You should be in some ashram. Then you get other cases. It's a complex world. I know of 2 cases where the wife is just, she doesn't want to live with her husband, but she refuses to divorce him also. This one devotee in Udupi told me that. I said to him, why aren't you married, He said, I am married. I said, oh, really? I never saw your wife. No, he said, I married her, and then after marriage she said, I'm not going to live with your parents. He said, you can come and live with my parents. He said, forget it, you're supposed to live with my parents. So she left him, and then she refused. She said to him that, no, I'm not going to divorce you. You'll be miserable now because you didn't do what I said. So he's working, looking after his parents without a wife. What a mess this world is. Therefore we need to establish varnashrama. But again, it's very difficult because the world's such a mess, and we're trying to preach brahmacharis should be brahmacharis, grihastas should be good grihastas. And then in the meantime, one of our grihastas runs off with another grihasta's wife or something like that. And then what do? Well, after all, they're devotees, and then you accept them back. Then others come say, hey, look, you can run off with someone's wife and get away with it. Or you can divorce and get away with it. So then we see that in different countries. I can think of Croatia and Czech Republic. There was no divorce. And then just 1 or 2 leaders did it. And then the whole floodgates open, so that when people... Then they're just like karmis. So they marry, and the devotees, supposed to be devotees, they marry, and they're always thinking in the back of their mind, my friend's wife, she seems better than my wife. They're always thinking like that. It may or may, I don't know, I can't say that. I don't accuse, it's not that everyone's thinking like that, but it's, how can you establish varnashrama in such a situation? There's no control. And someone asked this in Radhakant, actually, just asked that in Bangalore. So why do we always emphasize women's role so much? Why not men's? And I said that, well, you see, the women are supposed to be subservient to the men, but you can't force that. If you try that by law, you can't even talk about it. So it's up to them to understand it and voluntarily submit, whereas previously they were just controlled. They didn't have any choice. Now if you say that women should be controlled, as Prabhupada said, as all the Shastras say, then even within our ISKCON you'll be heavily admonished for saying such a thing. So it makes it very difficult when the laws are against us, when the devotees don't believe what Prabhupada says and they believe instead what some screwed up psychologists say. It becomes very difficult.
Recently in Mayapur I met a medical doctor he serves the Brahmacharis there for the last 15 years. Once every 2 weeks he visits and visits them.
In Mayapur you met a medical doctor who's been serving the Brahmacharis for the last 15 years. He visits them every week or so.
And he told me that the Brahmacharis, he tells them, why don't you take care of their bodies? Why do you...
He tells them, why don't you take care of your bodies?
And they try to preach him that, we are not these bodies.
They preach to him that they're not the body.
Their health.
Well, that's another foolishness, isn't it? In the Brahmacharis in Mayapur, they almost all suffer from digestive problems due to having, heavy meals 2 or 3 times a day and not much active work. In Moscow, in the Brahmacari ashram, Goswami Maharaj, Bhakti Vikasa Swami Maharaj, he made part of the morning program, 45 minutes yoga every morning, because the Brahmacharis are all sick. How about that? Better do some yoga than spend half your life visiting doctors and this and that. I'm not against that. They have Mangaladi at 4 o'clock. They have a long morning program because they have to fit in like 45 minutes yoga. Maybe it's a good idea. I try to do exercises for some time every day. Yeah, we've got a lot of questions here. Yes?
Some pictures and temples have policies that before anyone joins full time they have to work outside.
Some temples have the policy that before someone joins they have to work outside for some time.
See that how they're responsible, how much they're responsible.
To see how much they're responsible.
Their motives to come to join the
What are their motives for coming to join?
Those that check people who just come join the Brahmacharis, they're restricted for something else.
So that they don't just join, whimsically. There's another term I'm looking for. Anyway, they don't join whimsically. Yeah, well, it can have its value, especially if they're able to associate with devotees during that time. Again, I think you have to see on a case-by-case basis. Having them work outside for some time, well, in most cases in India, those who have been through an education, they have debts to pay for their education, so that's one reason to work, to pay off the debt. Another thing is that later on they might think that, well, I could have been I could have had a successful career, or they may have that in their mind. Whereas if they go to work, they can experience how unpalatable it is to be in that situation, how much better it is to be in Brahmachari life. So there are some advantages to that. Although it may not be in every case. We've seen some devotees here in India also, who've left their education midstream without even finishing it and joined full time, and they're doing well. Yeah, Gaur Bhagavan had a question next.
There is another category of grihasthas who want to marry but they don't want to have children.
Grihasthas who want to marry but don't want to have children, and they preach that, well, children are just a nuisance, they interfere with your preaching. Yeah, well, that's one of my observances, that first of all, young girls don't want to get married, so you have to tell them to get married. Then they don't want to have children, so you have to preach them to have children. And then when they have children, They don't look after them because they're too busy working or preaching or whatever. Then why get married at all if you don't? What's it just for? For sex or companionship or what? Prabhupada, he would always quote Manu that Putrate kriyate bharya. One marries to have a son. And the next line is Putra pinda prayojanam. A son is required for offering pinda. Although as Gauriya Vaishnavas we don't do that. At least we don't do it in the way that the Smartas do. But Prabhupada would often preach that. He would quote that. Anyway, there are so many ideas going around. What often happens is that young girls don't want to get married. Then around the age of 30 they think, I'm not married. And all of a sudden they want to get married. But if there's any young man who wants to get married, they want to marry a younger girl, so it becomes very difficult for them. Then okay, they get married. Then they don't have children. Then they're almost 40 and they think, I want to have children. And it becomes very difficult for them to conceive. So this is quite common, as I've seen. So it's better we follow the system. They're given by nature, that Shastra recommends, that Prabhupada recommends. Girls get married at a young age. They have children. They have plenty of children. But nowadays it's having children also. It's so expensive to have children. You can't afford to have children in India. And in the West they just think children are just a headache, that's all, just a nuisance. If the child remains in the house up to age 18, they kick them out. It's their 18th birthday present. I've looked after you long enough, get out of here. There are different cases. Generally at the age 18 they go to college and this and that. But we see if they're a good parents, so they can be. It makes a difference really makes a lot of difference to people how their parents raise them and look after them and impart values to them, or don't look after them, don't impart values to them. It makes a lot of difference. And that's why Arjuna talks about Varna Sankara. Because if kids are just wild, then what kind of society can you expect? We see even now, I often think of, in Dubai, Sri Vallabhananda Kumar, their parents, their father's like very principled. I know you don't agree with everything he says, but he's a very principled and moral person, very strong, that his children should be well behaved and like that, and they have been, and they're also, I don't think in the life of Sri Vallabhananda Kumar they ever contemplated any gross immorality or any such thing, because they were raised like that, and the whole family's become good devotees. So you see, of course his wife is supporting him well from the background, but especially their fathers. He took the trouble to be very strong. He could have, you can just let your kids run wild here and there, but he was very strong to discipline them. And they appreciate that, and you see, they've also become outstanding people in their own respect. So, Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.